But that's when I was like, okay, so can I go back to that life? And he said no. And then he told me about my husband. I was crying at that point because I was upset that I couldn't go back. And he said, there are no tears in heaven. And when he said that, it was like a power came over me, that it washed over me, calmed me down. And then I could hear peace. It was a vibration. And I was just like, wow, wow. It calmed me down. And that's when I was able to have a conversation with him more clearly. And after he established that life was over, I was just kind of like, okay, now what?
Hi, Soul Family, and welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Haji, and this is the first of this series, Amazing Pre-Birth Stories. And our guest today is Angela Comfort. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Angela has a wealth of amazing stories, especially her pre-birth. So we're gonna, we're gonna jump straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Okay.
Okay.
So, um, I remember living before, and I had a husband. I had found out that he had cheated on me, and I was very upset with him. I remember that I worked out and I came home and I was talking to my husband and telling him, you need to let go of that girl. That needs to be done now. You're staying with me. He was really thinking of a divorce, but I was telling him no. And I remember being very upset about it. And so I remember driving, and then I got into a car wreck, and where I went was full of clouds and no defined space. I didn't know where I was. I at that point realized, okay, I left my body. I'm still conscious. I'm still a soul, something. I need to get back to that body, fix that marriage, and maybe work on my relationship with God, because at that point I was just so focused on life, working out, making money, my husband, whatever. I remember passing palm trees before I died too. So I just don't know exactly where I was located on Earth at the time, but I know it was somewhere nice and warm. It was America for sure. But anyway, in this space, I saw two beings approach me, and they weren't defined at first. They were just full of light. And then they were like, "Hi, how are you? It's been so long." And I'm like, "Who are you?" And then they turned into what they were wearing on Earth, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know you." But I'm like, "How do I know you?" Because they were wearing 1800s attire, like with the woman had the really big hat with stuff on it, black dress. The man had a suit and a top hat. And so then I was like, "Wow, how are you guys? Wait a minute, I need to get to Earth. Where's Earth?" And they were kind of confused why I wanted to go. But I'm like, I just need to get back to that life. You guys understand. Anyway, good seeing you. How do I get back? And they were like, I think you just talked to that guide over there. And so I went toward the guide. He was very tall, just white gowns. And I'm still looking around for the planet to see if I can get there myself, because I just want to go. I know that the body is dying and I need to get to it. And so the guide, he was looking through a clipboard, and I said, I need to get back to Earth. And well, I said, I need to get back to my body. And he said, you're from Earth, right? And I was just like, yes. But I was thinking, what do you mean from Earth? Like, aren't we all? Um, so he looked through his clipboard and said, I'm sorry that life is over. And I was like, no, 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 no. So then I ended up talking to two other guides who were trying to calm me down, but I wasn't having it. I'm like, I need to get back to that body. And they looked at each other and they said, we need to get him. And I was like, get him. And so behind them, something opened up and an orb came right through it. And behind that orb was thousands of light beings, like in a stadium, but I couldn't enter it. And I realized that must be where God is. And it's so holy in there. I'm not allowed in there. I just can't, I just felt kind of ashamed that I was even alive because of how holy that room was. And like, I'll do better, I'll be better, just let me get to my body. You know, all these things are going through me because that was just very overwhelming. So the light approached me and formed into a man, and whatever he came through closed off. So now, once again, it's just two guides, this man in front of me. I don't know who's behind me anymore. I'm just so focused on this man because as he approached, his power was just so great. I knew if he said, you can go back to your body, it would be done. I knew that if he said I couldn't, that it would be over. And when I was looking at him, I was just like, you are all powerful. And I'm thinking all these things in my head were, so I thought that they were private thoughts, but they were actually out loud thoughts. Everybody could hear everything I was thinking, and I had no idea. And so he approached and I said, you look like Jesus, but you're not Jesus, or you are, oh man. And it was like the realization that it was Jesus came over me because of how much power and love he had. And in his eyes too, like I know everybody says they were brown, but when I saw them, they were blue with, they looked like they had the universe inside. It was amazing. Like I've never seen eyes like it. And I was pretty close to him. And I just knew that he had all the power. And I said, can I go back? And he said, that life is over. And I knew what he meant. And I said, what about my husband though? Like he said, he'll continue to be with that woman. He'll marry her and he'll cheat on her too. So when he said that, it just got to me. Okay, obviously that life is over. That man is, you know, that situation done with. I forgot to, I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. When I did see him, I was talking to him with my mouth. He said, we don't talk like this here. And then he said to me, we talk like this. And that's when I felt embarrassed because I was like, oh, he heard everything I said. Like, this doesn't look like Jesus, but it must be. And all these thoughts that I had. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's when I also noticed his marks. Now, I don't remember if they were in his palms or in his wrists, but I do remember the marks. I felt remorse because he had died for us. But I just said, wow, you really did it. But that's when I was like, okay, so can I go back to that life? And he said no. And then he told me about my husband. I was crying at that point because I was upset that I couldn't go back. And he said, there are no tears in heaven. And when he said that, it was like a power came over me, that it washed over me, calmed me down. And then I could hear peace. It was a vibration. And I was just like, wow, it calmed me down. And that's when I was able to have a conversation with him more clearly. And after he established that life was over, I was just kind of like, okay, now what? I didn't want to go to hell because Jesus is in front of me. My whole life, I was just concentrating on working out, looking good, working, making money, my husband. And now I'm in front of Jesus. So I just felt bad. And he said, I need to show you something. And he turned to his right. So I was following him that way. And there was a guide with something. And there was a big screen that showed up. And I realized it was my life review. And I'm like, oh gosh, Jesus is with me watching my life review. There's probably going to be stuff that he's not going to like to see. So I was embarrassed again. But we walked through every moment, and some of it was sped up and some of it was slowed down. But the parts that were slowed down were the little parts. I remember one moment I gave some cash, like leftover cash, to somebody in a grocery store. And Jesus said that really mattered. And I'm like, wow, so it's the little moments. And then we got to the end of my life, but I do remember having to go back as well in my life review. Sorry. I was on a playground and I was a little girl, and I remember wearing dresses and shoes and having to stay kind of like on the grass. There wasn't really a swing set or anything. The boys were running around playing with a ball, and I couldn't join them because I'm a girl. And so I was a little irritated about that. But I remember a boy approaching me, and all my friends were like, he's going to ask you out. And I'm like, be quiet, because I didn't want him to. And he did. And I said, I'm sorry. And I said, I'm sorry, I just can't. And I turned back around to my friends and I was like, ugh. But I remembered it from my point of view. And then when we went back, we saw his point of view of him approaching me, how nervous he was and his heart pounding, and there I am, and he just wants to be with me. And I literally I felt like I was him. And myself, I saw me, but it was like a different person. And so when that person, me, said no, I felt hatred and anger, and why am I rejected? And then throughout his life, he asked other girls out, and he kept thinking of me. It's because of you. You rejected me in the first place. And I just felt trapped in that consciousness in his body. Like, why am I seeing this? But then he opened up a book later in his life, and it was a Bible. And I saw him reading the lines with his finger. And as he approached something about forgiveness, I remember him looking up from his desk, thinking of me, and saying, I forgive you, and please forgive me. And it like released me from him. And I was like, wow. And I do remember asking Jesus, what if he wouldn't have forgiven me? He said, you would have had another life with him. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know to what extent. I don't know if it would have just been another similar situation or what. But I was just like, wow, good thing he forgave me. And there was also another time where my friend was with me. She had dark curly hair and she was working. And I remember she took something totally, like mentally, she took something completely different than I had intention of her taking it. Like whether I scheduled something with her and I blew her off or whatever the case. To me, it was just like a little thing, nothing, no big deal. She was hurt by it and was complaining to other people. But as soon as I interacted with her, like I saw me, I was her, and I saw me interacting, and which was really strange. But she was like, oh, I forgive you. And it just went away. It was fine. Like it didn't trail on. She had already loved me, forgave me instantly. But it was a situation that I had to observe. How did I treat somebody? How did they feel about it? Even if I meant nothing like that, which I really think it was me scheduling something and brushing her off. I really think that's what it was. I don't fully remember. I just remember her pain. But when she saw me and interacted with me, it was fine. I remember her talking to other people and complaining about me. And I remember thinking, I didn't even mean that like that. I don't know why she's saying that, but I heard their conversations and everything. And after that life review, after all of that, Jesus asked me, what do you think of that life? And I said, well, she had a good heart. And I kind of felt like Jesus was waiting for more. And I was like, I could have done better. I could have done a lot better. And so he said, okay. And so he said, I need to show you something else. And I'm like, okay. I still remember feeling I don't want to go to hell. I don't know what's going to happen, anything. So yeah, sure, show me. So then he shows me another screen completely separate from the first one. And he said, I need you to judge this life. And I said, okay, no problem. So as I'm watching it, I'm just watching a television screen. I'm not even involved with it. Nothing, no emotional attachment. Don't recognize anyone on the TV, nothing. It's like a TV, I say, but it was like a flat screen projection, something like that. And so as I'm watching it, I'm seeing the girl is kind of living in poverty, having some issues, normal life up until she gets involved with some guys and her heart gets broken. And I'm like, oh, I feel for you, because I just went through that in my life. So I'm identifying with you through that situation. But she kept staying with the guy, even though signs were pretty clear, you need to leave. There's nothing going on in the relationship that's good. But she just kept staying. And as this is happening, though, I'm feeling more and more involved with this girl. Like I'm really absorbed in all her emotions. And I'm getting confused, but I keep pulling out like, oh, you need to leave, you need to leave. And then feeling the pain and the hurt every time she stays with this guy. And I just don't understand why she's staying. And then at some point, even I push away further and I'm like, why are you with him? Why are you doing this? And then I'm still observing. That's when I really get involved and I'm feeling like this is me. Like how you fall asleep in a dream, you're not sure it's a dream until you wake up and you're like, wow, that was a dream. So as I'm watching this, it's just progressing. And then I'm starting to cry. I'm feeling all the emotions. I'm really believing it is me at this point. And then I get separated. And I was like, oh my God, thank you guys for separating me. That's not me. Holy moly. Like, and they were like shocked. They had faces of kind of almost sad for me or something. And I'm like, what? and Jesus said, what do you think of that life? And I said, oh, well, I mean, she's nice to other people, you know, just trying to give the good points of everything. But then I said, but then she kept getting with that guy, which I understand. She loved him. She had kids with him, but it clearly wasn't going anywhere. And I think I would have left, I mean, before it got to that point. But I mean, to be honest, she was stupid. That's what I said. And Jesus said, that's you. I mean, as soon as he said that, it freaked me out so bad. I felt like he told me you just went to hell. Like you're going to hell, like literally. Because I was like, I felt like that was a nightmare. I can't, what do you mean that's me? I wouldn't do anything like that. I'm not even attracted to that guy. I literally said that. I said, what are you talking about? That life has nothing to do with me. I recognize none of it. And he said, you'll like the mother. And I was like, I will. I don't even know why, but he knew if he said that to me, I would calm down and listen. But that's Jesus, I guess. Like, I don't know how he knew that. But he said, would you like to meet her? And I was like, yeah. And he approached me and went this way. And as he did, I followed him. And like I kind of turned myself. And there's Earth. I'm like, the whole time the Earth is right there. Oh my gosh. And so I just remember looking down on the Earth and being with Jesus. I'm like, I'm about to have a good time here. So Jesus said, are you ready? And I said, yeah. And so he jumped and started flying, and somehow I went with him. I don't know if we were tethered together. I don't know. But as we approached, it was sunny behind me, and it was Africa where we were going. And as we were zooming in, it was like really fast. I guess we were somewhere between the moon and Earth, or maybe on the moon, something like that. But that not that too far away, but like we were like getting close. So as we approached Africa, it was like the middle of it. It was like the country got bigger and bigger, you know, to me. And we zoomed in on a group of people. They were going like this and like dancing and stuff. And I was just like, so I stopped thinking, I'm going to witness Jesus like telling them no and saying, don't conjure and stuff. But I stopped and he kept going a little and he kept going. And I'm like, you know, thinking, what's going on here? And he literally moved his arm like, come on. He didn't even say anything to them or me. And I was just like, okay. So we continued and we were just over the treetops and we were going faster and faster. And the sun must have been behind me because we were going east. And I know I passed the wall of China, and I ended up looking it up later because it didn't make sense. How could I be heading to Mishawaka, Indiana from Africa and pass the wall of China? Well, if you look at the map, there's a tiny little section, and that's where I must have flown over. Because I was like, the wall of China, wow, you know, just looking at everything. This is amazing. It was so, so cool. And then we approached the Pacific Ocean, and I wanted to touch it, but I was like, if I touch it, I'm going to slow Jesus down, so I better not. But I just really wanted to, but I don't think he would have cared, but I wanted to respect him. Like, he has authority, and I don't want to make him mad, but I don't think I did. But anyway, I mean, we approached California, and then it was like middle of the States, and then all of a sudden Indiana, like that quick. It was so fast. And then when we stopped, we were in the middle of the street in Mishawaka, Indiana, and it was nighttime. So when I approached Africa, it was daytime. It was sunny. And when I was in Mishawaka, Indiana, it was nighttime. And so I'm looking around, where am I going? You know, what's happening? And I said, where's the mother to Jesus? And he said, inside, talking about the house. And I said, oh, well, how do I see her? And he said, just approach. So then I started, like, I was like nervous, like, okay, I'm going to see this mother. And as soon as I moved toward the house, boom, I'm in the kitchen. I didn't even have to, I was like, what happened here? She was doing dishes, and I was going to bring a picture, dang it, but I don't know where it's at right now. I'm sorry, but to kind of help give a visual. But anyway, she was doing dishes, and I was watching her like, and I felt her frantic energy. Like, she's a bit stressed out. She's worried about a lot. She's constantly thinking, and that is totally my mother now. Like, seriously. And I was just trying to see her more. And then two voices came from the other room, and I looked to them, but it was like either I wasn't allowed to see them or their arguing pushed me out. I don't know if they were arguing or raised their voices or what, but when I went to look to them, boom, I'm back out with Jesus. I didn't get to see my dad. I didn't see the house, the rest of it, just the kitchen. And I was like, what was that? And Jesus said, that's normal family life. And I said, okay. And then I heard something behind me, and I turn around. It's a car coming. And I was like, oh! So I get out of the way, and it goes right through Jesus. And I was like, he didn't even move. He didn't care. Like, we were floating above the street, I would say maybe 2 to 3 feet, but still, I mean, it went through half of his body. And he said, are you ready to go back now? And I said, yeah, thinking we were going to fly again and it's going to be so cool. No, it was instant. We were back wherever we were from the first time. And I was like, oh man, because I wanted to fly again. That was so fun. You feel so safe. You're not going to fall. Like, Jesus is with you. You could go as fast as you want. It was so cool. But I mean, he took control of it. I just was going for the ride and just looking at all the trees and everything. It was so fun. But so continuing on, after that ride, I was like, oh, the reality hit me. I'm gonna be that person. Nah, like, I don't want it. Yeah, you showed me some cool stuff, but no. And because I already lived my life and already had a guy cheat on me, I don't want to do it again. And so I was like, well, if I'm really gonna do this, I have some questions. Why do I need to do it? And he said, I need you to. You're the only one that can do it. And I felt that. I still don't really understand why me. Why am I the only one that could do it? But I asked him, okay, well, how long will it last? He said about 30 years. So when I was turning 30, when I was like 29, 28, I was like, I'm going to die when I'm 30. And that didn't happen because I've been asking ever since, like, thank you for letting me come here. Please let me live longer than you originally said, because I want to help influence as many people as possible, or help you. I just want to help, you know. And I said, what will my personality be like? And he lifted his arm and said, you'll be born under the sign of Aries. And so I looked where he was pointing, and I literally saw the constellation. I was like, oh, wow. And it came down like a flash of light, and I felt it. Aries, I know what that is. And I was Aries before in my previous life. So I was like, oh, I'll have a similar personality. Well, he actually said, you'll have a similar personality as before. And I said, what about school? Because it's like all the things I don't want to do keep popping in my head. And he said, I'll make it easy for you. So I did graduate from St. Mary's College with a Bachelor in Sciences in Biology. It was a little hard sometimes, but I got through it. I remember he said technology would increase. He actually had a cell phone. And I was like, whoa, this is cool. And it was like literally a smartphone. And I remember scrolling and stuff. And I was like, how does it work? I don't get it. And he said, like, he showed, I would say, a holographic Earth. and that we would all be connected. Little lights would ping up all over the earth, and it's like light workers, and we would all be connected. And the way he described it was through a web. So now, as I understand it, the internet, the web, okay. So that must have been how the phone was working. And I said, well, I always be connected to you because I can't do it if you're not connected to me. And he said, yes, I'll always be with you. So and he said he would send some guides with me. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else in that fragment. I do remember, he said your new name will be Angela Comfort. So he waved in front of himself, and above me, like holographic image of my old name pixelating out, my new name coming in. And I was like, okay. I still didn't want to go. So I said, well, what will I look like? So then he took me to this other area, and it was like a vanity, and it had a really nice, beautiful, everything was beautiful, mirror. And I looked at myself and I was like, oh, I look like I did before. But I noticed just mostly in my eyes that I looked really similar to how I did before. My nose and my chin were kind of similar, but I wasn't sure. And then I turned myself back and forth, and I was like, no, my nose is a little longer this time, and my chin too in this life. But I could actually see it like a holographic mask over myself. So as I turned, I could see my real self and the new Angie on top of it. And I was like, I wonder if people will recognize me. But then I also saw my daughter, Kirsten. She's 16 now, but I don't know how old she was when I saw her, but she was a little older, and not in her 20s or anything, but I would say in her teens maybe. And she stayed away from me. She didn't come to me or anything. She actually had her arms crossed and nodded like, yes, I'll be with you. And that is totally her personality now. And the other two, Lauren and Braden, were like jumping at me. You're my mom, you're my mom. And I was like, yes, I'm your mom. I don't know you. So anyway, I'll be your mom. Like, I kind of love you, but I don't know you. But I totally love them now as I am. But up there, I was just like, okay, we got this contract. Okay. Like, I still don't want to go, And there was a couple of things that he needed to warn me about before I left. He said, I need to show you something. And I said, okay. So then he went like this, and all of a sudden I'm in this room with two girls, and it's like a green room, and something is totally off. And I said, what is going on here? Who are these girls? And the one was in front of me. She is actually one of my good friends, Lorelai. And then there was another girl in the room. And I said, what is going on in here? And Jesus said, drugs. I said, drugs, I know drugs. I won't do them. And then he said, there's a betrayal. And I said, who? And then I said, how do I know these girls? Like, I stepped out of that. I didn't want anything to do with it. What's the point? There's drugs, a betrayal, don't want it. And he said, through a boyfriend. And I said, oh, was he my husband? And now I saw the back of his head. He actually turned away. I saw a vision. He turned away and walked toward the living room. So when that happened in real life, I was like, deja vu, man. Like, wow. And the incidents happened in the bedroom too, but I was smoking weed. And it was like, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like Jesus talking to me, demons surrounding me, and something bad's going to happen, because I remember the girls. And it was like a deja vu. And I was staring right at my friend. And I remember asking Jesus, is she the one that betrays me? And I remember just staring at her and going closer. And that's actually what happened. I was just staring at her and going closer. I don't even know why. But he said, no, she really loves you. But that's when I said, oh, whatever. How do I know these girls? And that's when he showed me the boy. But I didn't really see his face. I only saw him turn away from me. So then I was like, I remember asking Jesus, is he my husband? He said yes, I think. But it was making it up. No, he did not. He said he will hurt you, which I know he said he will hurt you. But I was like, he will hurt me, and then yes, you know. You know how we do things, whatever. So there was another incident too where he needed to, I guess he needed to really show me about the drugs thing, because he showed me again, and I'm like, why are you showing me about drugs? I don't do drugs. I'm not going to. Like, when you're up there, you understand things. You don't need anything. You feel good. You don't need alcohol or anything. You just feel good. So I saw an apartment building with one of my other friends, and she was smoking weed, and we were talking, and then it progressed and progressed and progressed into a terrible life. It just went downhill through process of, I don't know, because literally as I was watching it, it was like a deja vu. And then I pulled away, and it was just playing on a screen, and I'm talking to Jesus. And I said, so what would happen if I continue on that life? And he said, you'll have to redo the life. Now, I don't know if he meant redo this exact life, redo these kind of life situations into a different life. I don't know. And so I said, you don't need to worry about it. So then in real life, when I was actually outside smoking, I looked up at the building, and I was like, and then I looked at her, and I said, it reminded me of Jesus warning me that if you continue down this path, you'll have to redo this life. And I said, oh my gosh, I gotta go home. I gotta go. I gotta leave. I never went back. Because I was like, I'm not doing that. No. But like I said, when the other part happened in my real life, it was just deja vu's, and I was holding on to that situation. I was not willing to let go. The thing that happened at the apartment happened after that. So I hope I'm clear. But so I said, I also asked, what is the point of that life? I don't get it. And he said, to learn to love and to learn how to love. And I said, that's it? He said, that's it. And I was just like, why can't it be simpler? Why do I have to feel pain to learn to love? But I said, I guess I understand everything. I met my kids. I got my warnings. I know I'll get through school. I'll live for 30 years, really longer. But anyway, he did say, he said, there's one more thing. You'll like this life. And I said, I will. And he said, yes. And the other thing with Jesus too, he's very short. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't need to. When he says something to you, you know what he means. And there was another thing, and now I can't remember what it is. It happened in that moment too, but I can't remember. If I recall it, I'll say it. But I said, okay, well, I guess I'm leaving. And he said, you just walk down that pier. And so I looked, and I was like, wow, because it was a lit up white pier. At the very end of it, there was a guide, and the earth was down there, and there was a very visible wormhole with the opening, like a water park. It has like the big opening, and you go down and you go through the slide. It was like that, but at the end of that pier. And so then I said, okay, I guess I'm ready. And then I was facing it, and I started moving forward, and I went to say, wish me luck, but it was nothing, absolute black, like the void. And I was like, like, that is freaky. There's no more Jesus. There's no more souls that I was interacting with, and everyone's gone. It's just complete gone. Like, I have no choice but to go in that wormhole. I can't run away, or else I'll be out in space somewhere. So I walked down the pier, and I remember speaking to the guide, and I said, I just jumped down there. And he said, yep. And he said he'd be with me, and that I would make it, because I was concerned. There was a space between the platform and the wormhole. Like, there was some space. Like, if I jumped off the pier and went straight down, I would be gone, like, woo, out in space. So I made an attempt to fully jump into it. And as I was approaching it, it got bigger and bigger. And I was like, whoa. And it was cyan, mostly, with a little bit of light rainbows in it, and it was swirling around. And then it got smaller and smaller, and I felt like I was getting tighter and heavier. And I'm like, oh, it's hard to stay awake. I'm tired. So I fell asleep. And then I woke up inside my mom. And when I was inside my mom, I was small. Like I had hands. So I said, I made it. I made it. And I opened and closed my hands. I really made it. I made it, Jesus, like you said. And I remember counting my fingers, and then I was like, okay. And I couldn't see my feet, and that freaked me out a little bit. I could only see past my knees a little bit. And I'm like, okay, I have 2 legs because I'm feeling at this point. And I'm wiggling my toes. I said, I feel toes. Well, Jesus didn't say I'd have deformities, so I guess I'm okay. And then I woke up a few other times in the womb, but each time it was like, at first I had room. You know, I'm moving around. I can fully stretch my legs, no big deal. But as time went on, I noticed I was more and more cramped. So I had less room, but it was more tiring. So I would just keep falling asleep. And then the last time I started feeling like something's going on. And I'm like, I'm on a mission, people, leave me alone. And it was actually me being born. It was my time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And so when they got me out, they put drops in my eyes, and now I'm like, oh, now I can't see at all. And they did something to my throat. I think they were just sucking out the amniotic fluid back then. And so it felt like it gagged me, and I wanted to wipe my eyes. So I just wanted to go like that real quick. And I have no control now, no control at all. I went from having absolute control in the womb, knowing where I wanted to put my hands and stuff, to no control at all, which freaked me out. And my mom said I was the loudest baby, so I cried the most. I remember being put on the scale and wanting somebody. I'm like, what is happening? This is not what you said at all, Jesus. I feel manipulated in a way. Oh yes, that was another thing. I did ask Jesus, what would happen if I don't go? I said, what will happen if I don't do it? He said, you won't like it. Okay, then I'm doing it. Because I don't know what he meant. I really don't. I knew that if I asked him, what do you mean? He would show me. And I didn't want to see, what do you mean I won't like it? So I really had no alternative. And they did hand me to my mom. And I remember thinking, is this the lady? I don't remember. Is this the lady? And I was just trying to see her, and I could see her, but she kept being blurry, and I kept trying to see with my eyes. And the thing that got me the most was her voice. And I was like, okay, this is the lady. This is my mother. And I remember being very hungry, very tired, frustrated, can't see, the lights are too bright, I'm cold, just everything, very uncomfortable, and mostly angry because I can't move. I can't do anything. I'm totally subject to anything, whatever anybody does to me. I do remember her breastfeeding me, and she told me she did for the first, I think, 2 or 3 months of my life. And that was so awkward. I was like, oh my gosh, I know what's happening here. Well, they don't know that I know. So anyway, I just felt so awkward. But they did think that I'm just a little baby, but I'm totally aware of what's happening. And I do remember, as I continued, as I fell asleep and woke up and fell asleep and woke up, I would forget more and more who I am, what I'm there for. It's more just a dream, falling into the dream more, into this life. And so I had little tidbits of recollection of my experience throughout my life. And when my oldest was born, Kirsten, I actually, I knew she would be cold and can't see and afraid and all of it. I just knew all of it. And I was like, hand her to me, hand her to me. I just wanted her so quickly. So I'm pretty sure I remembered most of this all my life. But in my late 20s is when I really remembered the whole thing. So that's my story.